Good morning, everyone. Shout out to my cousin in the back of the room. So good morning, fellow conservatives. Good morning, fellow patriots. And good morning to my mother-in-law, Dorothy, who's watching on PCN. Good morning. She'll probably email me during the show and tell me if my tie's crooked. So whenever I do television, she's the first one to comment, and it's usually whether my shoes or tie didn't match, but that's what mother-in-laws are for, right? So welcome today. We have some great speakers, some great panels, a lot of information to share, a lot of war stories, a lot of motivation, a lot of information to tell us what's happening and, more importantly, how to fix what's wrong. And I would ask you, as we kick off today as your MC, to do two things. One is you will hear a great deal of information throughout this conference on a variety of subjects. Think about the one that touches your heart. Is it school choice? Is it immigration? Is it our economy? Strengthening families? Whatever it might be. What is that issue that touches you, and commit yourself to it to learn more about it and be a fighter and a spokesperson for it. And secondly, let the events of the elections of the last few weeks not depress us, not get us down, but motivate us and remind us that as historic as last November was, as important as it was to recapture the White House, to stop the harm that they're doing, as important as it was to recapture the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House, our work is not done. Let us not rest on our laurels. Let us not take it for granted. Let us not be frustrated by what happened in Lancaster or Wisconsin. Rather, let it be a wake-up call and to remind us that just like President Trump, our work is not done. We are committed to winning the elections of 25, 26, and beyond. And just as importantly, we are committed to working on the issues we care about to see them through to fruition. It is not enough to come here and learn about things like school choice. It is time to bring them into reality. So with that, I welcome you here, and we're on to our kickoff speaker. As Jeb Bush would say, clap, please. Our kickoff speaker for the 2025 conference is Chris Stigall. And the good news is he's here. He's actually behind stage, so you don't have to wonder. Let me say a few words about Chris. Now, his biography is in your program book. You can learn more about it and read it and absorb it. Let me share a few things that are highlights. For decades, Chris has brought his own conservative values, but also newsmakers, and a sense of humor and a sense of reality to listeners across the Midwest of the U.S. and Philadelphia. And since January, he is now the morning host on the Salem News Channel, heard across the entire nation on the radio, and for the entire nation and the world on the Salem News Channel. And there he continues to do what he has done so well. Not only bring us newsmakers, but in a sea of information, in a sea of news stories, remind us what is important. And he would be the first to tell you, as important as his calling is to be a radio commentator and radio host, just as important, he is a man of faith, a husband, and a dad. In addition, he and his wife, Christine, are edupreneurs, helping parents and educators understand in all the chaos that is education, how to make sure that our children learn to read and write, but just as important, are raised with values to be good citizens and good people. I have had the pleasure to know Chris for over a decade, and we have become great friends. I am so fortunate that we get to kick off this conference with my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, our 2025 kickoff speaker, the voice of the Salem News Network, Mr. Chris Stigall.
And that open only cost me $20. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. That was nice. Boy, it is good to be with you. Great to see everyone here in Harrisburg today. And I thank Lohman, and I thank all of you for the invitation today. I was thrilled to be invited. The Americans for Prosperity folks, who are great sponsors of this event, I thank them for the invitation and the honor of being here. They are also great partners and sponsors with us at the Salem Network. I know many of you know my colleagues. Thrilled and honored to say that starting last week, Charlie Kirk is now middays across the country. Dennis Prager, thank goodness, will be returning for an hour of the day soon, as he's on the mend, as many of you know. And of course, my colleague Hugh Hewitt, who left mornings to go to afternoons because my former colleague, Sebastian Gorka, is now at the White House doing great work in counterterrorism. So things are good at Team Salem, and it is a real honor to be here representing them today. And as you know, folks, we stand here at a crossroads, much like we did in 1964 when Ronald Reagan warned us about a time for choosing. The stakes are higher now than they were then. And as we confront a Democrat Party that has caused serious harm to our nation for over a century, they continue to do so today. I am optimistic because of Team Trump and that outstanding cabinet he's put together, working tirelessly to get us back on track and restore the greatness of this country. We're engaged in a big battle, though, folks. The courts and, frankly, a few Republicans in Congress, more than a few to my liking, don't seem to either understand the urgency or don't, worse, seem to care. The relentless struggle between liberty and tyranny in America traces back to Democrats' enduring legacy of violence and manipulation, rooted in its Civil War origins, I'm sorry to say. Southern Democrats igniting a bloody rebellion to preserve slavery. They lost the war, and yet they never relinquished their drive to divide and dominate fellow citizens. From the ashes of defeat, they wielded terror and deceit through Reconstruction and the brutal suppression there, as well as Jim Crow's systemic oppression. They used them all as tools to regain power. And this perverse strategy, I'm sorry to say, persists today. It's adapted as the party's modern tactics continue to erode the freedoms, all under the new guises of a pursuit for power. Occupy Wall Street, you remember that? Shuttering businesses, Democrat mayors stood idle. In 2020, the Black Lives Matter protests spiraled into riots. We saw it certainly in Philadelphia. Looted stores, torched neighborhoods, Soros-backed crime waves, all under Democrats' protective cover. Some even kneeling in solidarity, like our former governor, Tom Wolf, here in Pennsylvania. Boo indeed. There's not enough time to do all the booing, but I'll tell you, the COVID era is what really unleashed some amazing authoritarianism like we've never seen, at least I haven't in my time. Lockdowns, crushing families, spiking suicides and drug use, shuttering schools and businesses. Democrat mayors and governors denied due process, and it was all cloaked in phony science. Blue states choked free speech. They strangled small business. They stunted children's educations and starved middle class of money and mobility. And it isn't by chance they did this, it's in their DNA. The Democrats' authoritarian legacy thrives on inciting chaos and dismantling our founding principles. Consider the rise of the would-be authoritarian Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders and their fight the oligarchy business. This is no mere slogan, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Marxist call to arms, targeting free market pioneers like Elon Musk while they forge an alliance with the vast wealth of the likes of George Soros. For decades, Soros's money has likely underwritten and orchestrated so much of the disorder we've been watching. Attacks on Tesla dealerships, contrived protests, plainly visible to all of us who are actually paying attention. And it's not happenstance. It's a calculated assault on the principles of our liberty. Now, I'm no psychiatrist, but Democrats and their militant allies display a pattern of relentless lawlessness and aggression. As Dr. Michael Savage, my talk radio colleague, says, liberalism has to be a mental disorder. It requires a peculiar moral distortion to orchestrate the unraveling of America's economy and culture, doesn't it? How else can one rationalize flinging open our southern border to admit millions of illegal aliens, among them convicted murderers and rapists? Barack Obama lit the fuse. Democrats opened our borders, borrowed trillions to prop open the border and bring in illegals. They empowered non-governmental organizations to forge a shadow government, all while enriching themselves. You're familiar with the story now, I'm sure, of USAID. $27.1 billion flowing into these non-governmental organizations, or NGOs, all to fund things like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and foreign terrorist organizations. Entwined, sadly, we find, with the FBI and the CIA, funded with our tax dollars. Or the NIH's $48 billion Fauci gain-of-function experiments, unleashing a pandemic that cost trillions and triggered lockdowns and tainted elections. Our taxes pay for people's salaries like Nancy Pelosi, $174,000 they make on paper, but that's enabled them to make much, much more, as we understand, through insider trading. I call all of this Griftgate. I've actually given it the name Griftgate. You know, they have Watergate, and they talk about what a big deal that was. Griftgate blows Watergate literally out of the water. Look, Griftgate, with Democrat favorability now at 21%, incidentally, and we should keep that in mind. They're only at 21%. It looms as a real reckoning for Democrats, if the Republicans step into the breach. And that's a big if, right? The left's anger has surged to a breaking point. They are as motivated as they've ever been. Even though they're as unpopular as they've ever been, they're not slowing down. 2 assassination attempts on our sitting president, Donald Trump. One, of course, right here in Pennsylvania, the other one in Florida, fueled by Democrats and their legacy media allies, falsely branding him as the fascist tyrant. A deregulator who is slashing the size and scope and cost and power of government. That is not a fascist or a dictator. It's the exact opposite. And now Elon Musk and his little son, they're targets. Why do you think they spend the amount of time they do at the White House? In all sincerity, they're targets now. And I believe, even though Democrats vilify and isolate and lash out when they've been exposed, Donald Trump and Elon Musk stand firm, backed by the American people, and I believe more importantly, the almighty hand of God. We have found ourselves, yes. Folks, we found ourselves in a very uncomfortable place, and we've got to ask ourselves, if we lose our freedom here, where do we go? Ronald Reagan warned us in 1964, if we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. These stakes are incredibly high, I don't have to tell you. Democrats are not merely obstructing Trump, they're waging a war on liberty itself, and they're using violence and propaganda and judicial overreach to impose this authoritarian agenda. They're following the path that Ronald Reagan warned us about, leading us toward the abyss of totalitarianism. But we have a choice. We have a choice to stand for freedom and unequivocally support Donald Trump. And we must. Because despite the challenges we face, there is hope. Team Trump is responding with common sense solutions and, in my opinion, remarkable courage. You know, he addressed the joint session of Congress back in February. I don't know if most of you saw it or not. I did, and I thought it was historic, as a matter of fact. He declared very simply, America is back. And he's right. It's a rallying cry. A rallying cry. 100 executive orders, 400 actions implemented, borders sealed, leading to record lows in illegal crossings. There was a 41-point increase in optimism among small business. National confidence rose by 27 points after that speech. Trump spoke of dismantling Biden's economic traps. He spoke up for Laken Riley and her family, a cancer-stricken teenager who was made an honorary Secret Service agent, and Gold Star families. And he reminded us that he, too, is a survivor of 2 assassination attempts that were allowed to happen, by the way. I think we all understand that here, don't we? I'll just leave it at that. Those things were allowed to happen. I'm convinced of it in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was allowed to happen, and I think we all know why. Because Democrats know they've been found out. They know Donald Trump is coming. They've been caught. And so they've launched this relentless campaign against Trump and Elon Musk, and we can all empathize with Trump's victim status. Frankly, I know I can, because we faced bullying from authoritarian governments ourselves. Trump has become a symbol. At least for someone like me, he's become a symbol. When they attack him, as far as I'm concerned, they're attacking me, and they're attacking you. Trump was elected for a lot of reasons. And here's just a few he mentioned in his brilliant joint session speech. He pledged to carry out the largest deportation in history, prioritize law and order led by the Department of Justice, and put an end to what he calls woke nonsense. Further, Trump recognizes there are only two genders, and that you are made in the image of God and you're great just the way you are. And it's about damn time somebody said it. Trump's message was simple: woke is dead, common sense is alive. Since that address, Trump has acted on his vision by issuing an executive order aimed directly at the Department of Education. This is huge. Many view obviously, the Department of Education is an utter failure since the Carter administration. Over the last 45 years, test scores have declined significantly. This department spends $190 billion annually, with 70% of it going to bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., rather than classrooms. It's an utter disgrace. The Department of Education has become a center for indoctrination, emphasizing progressive ideologies over core academics. And the impact of COVID further underscored these issues. Math scores dropped by 13%. Teen suicides increased by 30%. Students fell behind in their studies, while Democrats mandated unnecessary shots. Trump's directive reduces the department's influence, returns control to the states, governors, and mayors, who are accountable to their voters to better educate our children. Now, Republicans in Congress must pass legislation to end this failure called the Department of Education once and for all. It's got to be done. And I have to express some personal concern here because it's very deeply personal to me. You know, in some states, public schools are adopting policies that resemble those from a communist playbook. These policies allow teachers to withhold information from parents when they suspect a child may be experiencing gender dysphoria, or treating children as if they belong to the state rather than their families. Throughout history, communist governments do this stuff. It's Mao's China kind of stuff, viewing children as state property when a family's beliefs conflict with the regime. They've claimed the right to indoctrinate or even remove children from their parents in some cases. Today, we see a dangerous parallel in America. Schools withholding critical information from parents, undermining the sacred bond of family. And it hits home for me because the COVID lockdowns and mandates here in the Commonwealth drove my family to a breaking point. After nearly 2 years of their school closed and my church closed and so many of our friends and colleagues and small businesses closed, Christine and I, my wife, had enough. We fled our community, I'm sorry to say. I hate it, but we had to save our children first. And she and I joined forces with a fantastic organization called the Herzog Foundation, and I commend it to you if you're someone that's interested in Christian education or homeschooling education, you'd like to start your own school, you'd like to start a micro school, maybe you want to learn how to homeschool, the Herzog Foundation, a foundation that my wife and I work with personally each and every day. They are a guidepost, they're a shining beacon for people that want to take control of their kids' educations wherever you live, wherever you live. Look, it's worth remembering America, like Trump, dodged a bullet last year. And DOGE is a huge, huge reason bullets are flying. The Department of Government Efficiency, launched in 2025 under the visionary leadership of Elon and Trump, is one of the most significant government programs, I would argue, in history. It represents a triumph comparable to the moon landing or the Mars exploration. And it aims to rescue a nation burdened by $36 trillion in debt, riddled with bureaucratic insufficiency. By slashing $1 million annually, DOGE dismantles a tangled web of corruption and waste and fraud that even Reagan couldn't have imagined the reforms that it brings. The technology didn't exist. This initiative merges agencies, synchronizes outdated systems, infuses private sector efficiency to save billions each day, all without raising your taxes or engaging in any military conflict. DOGE is a bold overhaul that goes far beyond the New Deal or Clinton's gradual budget surpluses or even Teddy Roosevelt's trust-busting efforts. DOGE is a technology-driven lifeline to a country on the brink of fiscal collapse. And if DOGE succeeds, it could represent the greatest financial achievement since Alexander Hamilton's founding vision. I believe it's that important. Imagine saving the country by reorganizing, shrinking, and bringing efficiency to government agencies with the greatest tech support the world has ever seen. Democrats want to see a country in collapse. They've always wanted a house divided. They've always embraced violence to stop progress. DOGE would serve as a beacon of what is possible when leaders prioritize the nation over personal gain, leaving a legacy that will resonate for generations. Trump's economic agenda is not radical. It reflects the successful strategies used by Reagan and people like Javier Milei. Reagan's tax cuts and deregulation resulted in a 7.3 GDP growth by 1994. Milei successfully reduced Argentina's inflation from 211% to below 100% in 1 year. Think of that. Similarly, Trump's extensive tax cuts and deregulation efforts and drill baby drill policies, of course, that's right, will lower energy costs and strengthen our competitive advantage. And not one Democrat supports any of this. And then, of course, Wednesday, Liberation Day, as Donald Trump called it. And I know there's healthy debate about tariffs, but balancing trade, it's going to result in some market volatility. It's going to result in some short-term discomfort, but we're already seeing American jobs expanding. In fact, I just saw the news today, did you not? The United States added 228,000 jobs in March, well above the 140,000 projected. That was just this morning's news. Trillions of dollars are coming back into this country. Manufacturing is coming back. The fact is the country needs more jobs because AI is coming and coming at us hard and fast. In fact, there's very smart folks out there that warn AI could threaten 30% of U.S. manufacturing jobs by 2030. Trump's policies can counteract that, though, I believe. Meanwhile, Democrats, they view technology as a tool for censorship and political dominance. Trump sees technology, specifically AI, as a tool to rein in government and attract the best and brightest. Trump has learned from the deceit surrounding Big Pharma's vaccines, the deep state's election interference. Those in power often prioritize control over fairness. And his response is trust but verify. Trump aims to ensure that American technology will create and attract brilliant innovators, jobs, wealth, and medical advances. And that cabinet, that amazing cabinet, Vance, Bessent, Lutnick, Patel, Rubio, RFK Jr., it's a team of communicators really driving home that agenda. You know, the 2026 midterm elections will likely show voters may grant Republicans larger majorities to pursue their agenda if, in fact, that Jobs and Tax Cut Act is passed. If, in fact, members of the House and Senate and the Republican side can get together and get this done, Trump needs it to get done. As Reagan said, we have a rendezvous with destiny. It's a chance to preserve the last best hope for mankind on earth. So let's be bold, folks. This is called the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. Let's be bold. Let's tell the truth in love and stand firm on God's word. Because when we do that, as the song says, He crowns thy good with brotherhood and sheds his grace on thee. This is history we're living. This is history in the making. Let's not be passive observers. Let's use Trump as an example. Let's be bold. Let's be unapologetic. Let's lead. Thank you, folks. Glad to be with you.